The corridor is on fire, and I am still breathing. That is the first thing I know. Not my name, not my rank, just this. Smoke in my lungs, blood in my mouth, and the sound of something with too many legs, dragging itself toward me across broken metal. I am Daniel Cross, Corporal, 3rd Colonial Marine Division. 6 hours ago I had a squad of 11. Now I have a rifle with 14 rounds left, and a knife I have not cleaned since the last station we lost. The thing in the smoke stops moving. It is listening for me. I am listening for it too. I do not move first. Waiting is a skill. Nobody teaches it in training. You learn it in places like this, on your knees in the dark, counting your own heartbeat, because it is the only clock you have left. The creature shifts its weight. Metal groans under it. I fire twice. It falls. Silence again. My hands are steady. I notice that and file it away, because steady hands after 11 deaths is not normal, and I do not have time right now to ask what it means about me. The station is called Threshold. 3 days ago it belonged to nobody in particular, a waypoint drifting between systems, a place where tired crews stop to refuel and complain about their commanding officers. Now it belongs to the Kothvel Warfleet, or it did, until my dropship put a hole in their hull and 11 Marines climbed through it screaming. 11 Marines walked in. I am the only one walking out. Behind me, down the corridor, past the bodies I stopped counting somewhere around number 20, there is a door. Command told us that door leads to their communications relay. Cut that relay, and the Kothvel fleet in this sector goes deaf. Blind ships do not coordinate. Ships that do not coordinate get picked apart one at a time. That was the plan. 11 Marines, 1 relay, in and out before their reinforcements arrive. Nobody planned for what came out of the walls. I check my rifle. 14 rounds. I have a sidearm with a full magazine and 1 spare. I have 4 grenades, but 2 of them are flashbang, useless for anything that does not have eyes shaped like ours. I have a knife that has already done work tonight. I do not want to think about in daylight, if I ever see daylight again. I move. The corridor bends left. Bodies of my own people lie against the wall where they fell, and I do not stop to look at their faces because I already know every one of them, and knowing is not the same as grieving, and grieving is a luxury for later, if there is a later. A voice comes over the comm, garbled, distant, Kothvel command trying to coordinate their forward units. I do not speak their language, but I understand fear when I hear it in any tongue, and there is fear in that voice now. Good. I round the corner, and the corridor opens into a wide chamber, some kind of maintenance bay, catwalks overhead, machinery below, and 6 Kothvel soldiers spread across the space like they are waiting for a parade. They see me before I see cover. I drop behind a support pillar as the first shots chew through the metal above my head. Sparks rain down. My ears ring. Somewhere in the noise I hear myself laughing, and I do not know why, except that laughing is easier than the alternative, and the alternative is not an option right now. I count their positions by sound. 2 left, 2 right, 2 on the catwalk above. Catwalk first. Always the high ground first. That is not a rule anyone taught me. It is a rule the war taught me. Carved in 1 lesson at a time, each lesson written in someone else's blood before it was written in mine. I come up firing. 2 rounds, 2 shapes fall from the catwalk, and the noise they make hitting the floor below is a sound I will hear again tonight, whether I want to or not. 12 rounds left. The 4 remaining soldiers scatter for cover, and now it is a different kind of fight, the kind where patience wins and panic loses, and I have had 6 hours of practice at not panicking, while everyone around me stopped breathing one by one. I throw the grenade sideways, not at them, past them, so it bounces off the far wall and rolls into the gap between 2 crates where 2 of them are hiding. The blast throws 1 soldier into the open. I do not miss. 9 rounds. The last 2 make a decision that gets them killed. They break cover together, thinking 2 targets moving is harder to track than 1. It is not. Not for me. Not tonight. 7 rounds. The chamber goes quiet except for the hum of failing machinery and the drip of something I do not want to identify. I lean against the pillar and slide down until I am sitting on the floor, and for 1 long moment, I let myself feel exactly how tired I am. My arms shake. My chest burns. There is a wound on my side I have not looked at yet, because looking at it will make it real, and real is something I cannot afford in the middle of a fight. Somewhere above the station, in orbit, on a bridge I will probably never see again, someone is watching a screen, and wondering if the last human on Threshold Station is still breathing. I am. I stand up. The relay is still 2 decks away, and I am not finished yet. Behind me, in the dark corridor I just walked through, a Cathvel officer presses a shaking hand against a comm panel and sends one message up the chain, a message that will travel faster than any ship in this fleet, faster than any warning they have ever sent before. 1 human. Threshold Station. Still moving. He does not know yet that this message is the first stone in an avalanche that will reach all the way to the War Council itself, to 12 beings who have never once in their long lives had to ask themselves what a single soldier is capable of. They are about to find out. I check my rifle one more time. 7 rounds is not much. It is going to have to be enough. 7 rounds carried me through a door I was not supposed to open yet. Behind that door was a stairwell, and in the stairwell was a squad of Cathvel soldiers moving down toward me in tight formation, the kind of formation you use when you expect to win. I used to move like that too, back when I still believed formations mattered more than luck. I threw my last 2 grenades up the stairwell and did not wait to see what happened. I was already moving, already counting seconds, already thinking about the next door and the one after that, because thinking about the last door is how you die on the next one. The blast came. Screaming came after it, then silence, then nothing at all, and I climbed over what was left of that formation without looking down, because looking down was another luxury, and I was fresh out of luxuries. 5 rounds left in my rifle. I switched to the sidearm and kept climbing. My name is Daniel Cross, and 6 months ago I was a farmer's son from a colony world called Meridian, a place with 2 suns and soil that turned gold in autumn, and I had never fired a weapon at anything that could fire back. Then the Cathvel fleet came to Meridian. They did not ask for surrender, they did not send a warning, they simply arrived in orbit and began to burn, and by the time our own fleet answered the distress call, there was very little left to save. I do not talk about Meridian, not to my squad, not to command, not to the counselors who tried to get me to talk about it during training. Some things do not get smaller when you say them out loud, some things only get heavier, because saying them makes them real, in a way that silence never does. What I will say is this. I signed up 8 days after the burning stopped. I was not the only one. There were thousands of us that year. Farmers and teachers and shop clerks, standing in recruitment lines that stretched for city blocks, all of us carrying the same silence, all of us ready to turn it into something useful. The Cathvel War Council calls it an uprising. Command calls it the Meridian Doctrine. I call it Tuesday, because that is the day it happened. And some days do not deserve a bigger name than the one they already have. I reached the 2nd deck with 5 rounds and a sidearm and a wound in my side that had finally decided to make itself known. A slow burn that pulsed every time my heart beat, which felt, in that moment, like an insult from my own body. The communications relay was close. I could feel it the way you feel a storm before it breaks, a pressure in the air, a wrongness that told me the Cathvel knew exactly where I was headed and were doing everything they could to stop me from getting there. They had sealed the main corridor. Blast doors, reinforced, the kind that do not open for anything short of a demolition charge, and I did not have a demolition charge, because demolition charges were carried by Owen Blake, and Owen Blake had died 4 hours ago pulling 3 of us out of a collapsing hallway. I stood in front of that door for a long moment, and for the first time since the dropship hit the hull, I did not know what to do next. Then I remembered the maintenance shaft. Every station like this has one, a narrow crawl space, built for technicians, not soldiers, not Marines carrying wounds they were trying not to think about. I found the access panel behind a bank of dead terminals and pried it open with the edge of my knife, and I climbed inside a space barely wide enough for my shoulders, and I started crawling toward the relay through a tunnel that smelled like burnt wiring and something worse underneath it. The crawl took 11 minutes. I know because I counted every one of them, because counting was the only thing keeping me from thinking about the wound in my side, which had stopped burning and started something colder, something that worried me more than the pain ever did. I came out through a vent panel directly above the relay chamber, and I looked down through the grate at 12 Cathvel technicians working the communications array, and beyond them, standing at the center of the room studying a display, an officer whose uniform marked him as something higher than the soldiers I had fought so far. A commander. Maybe the commander who had ordered the burning of a world with 2 suns and gold autumn soil. I did not know that for certain. It did not matter. What mattered was that this room was the reason 11 Marines had died today, and I intended to make that reason count for something. I dropped through the vent. The fall knocked the air out of me, but it also gave me one full second where nobody in that room understood what had just happened, and 1 full second is a very long time when you have trained for exactly this. 5 rounds, 12 targets. The math did not favor me, and I already knew it, and I moved anyway, because the math has never once stopped a Marine from Meridian. Not on that farm world, not on this station, not anywhere the Kothvel have tried to test us since. The first 3 rounds took the technicians nearest the door, cutting off any chance of a warning reaching the corridor outside. The 4th round took a soldier reaching for a weapon on the far wall. The 5th round, my last, took the officer directly, and he went down without a sound, which surprised me, because I had expected something more from a man who had ordered so much death. Then it was hand to hand, in a room full of panicking technicians who had never once expected to fight for their lives, and I want to say I remember every moment of what happened next, but I do not, because somewhere in that chaos, the wound in my side finally won its argument with the rest of my body, and the room tilted sideways, and the last thing I heard clearly was an alarm beginning to sound, a long mechanical wail that meant the relay had gone dark. We did it, 11 Marines and one who kept moving, and the relay was dark, and somewhere up in orbit a fleet that had been coordinating perfectly for 3 days suddenly could not hear itself think. I do not remember hitting the floor. I remember waking up. That is not entirely true either. What I remember is a voice, low and urgent, speaking a language I did not recognize, and hands that were not gentle, but were not cruel either, dragging me somewhere I had not chosen to go. I opened my eyes to a holding cell, gray walls, a single light overhead, and across from me, watching me through a reinforced window, a Kothvel officer with an expression I would come to recognize over the following days as something close to disbelief. They had not killed me. I would learn later that this was a decision made far above that officer's authority, a decision that traveled up through the fleet command structure until it reached 12 beings sitting around a council ring, beings who had received a report about 1 human Marine and 41 confirmed kills across a single station, and who wanted, more than anything else in that moment, to understand how such a number was possible. They did not send me back to a cell to punish me. They sent me there to study me. I did not know that yet, lying on a cold floor with a wound that had been crudely bandaged by hands that clearly did not want to touch me for longer than necessary. All I knew was that I was still breathing, that the relay was dark, and that somewhere in this fleet, someone was asking a question about me that I had not yet learned the shape of. What is the kill count for 1 Earth Marine? I did not know the answer either, not yet. But I was about to find out exactly how far this war intended to take me, and exactly how far I was willing to let it. They kept me in that cell for 2 days before anyone spoke to me directly. I spent the time counting cracks in the ceiling and testing the strength of the door, not because I expected to break it down, but because knowing your cage is a habit you do not lose once you learn it. The wound in my side had been treated with something that stung worse than the injury itself, but it was healing, and my legs no longer felt like they belonged to someone else. On the 3rd day, the door opened, and a Kothvel woman walked in wearing a uniform I had not seen before, dark green with silver markings along the collar, and she carried herself like someone who had never once been told no and meant it. She introduced herself as Verith Nolis, liaison to the War Council, and she spoke my language with an accent that made every word sound slightly rehearsed, like she had learned it from recordings rather than people. I did not answer her first question, or her second. By the 4th, she stopped asking and simply sat down across from me, and we looked at each other in silence for what felt like a very long time. 41, she said finally. That is the number our forces recorded. 41 confirmed kills, from the moment your dropship breached the hull to the moment you disabled our communications relay. Is that number accurate? I did not know the exact count. I had stopped counting somewhere around 30, because counting had started to feel like something I did not want to keep doing. Could be, I said. Sounds about right. She studied me for a long moment, the way you study something you cannot quite believe is real even though it is sitting right in front of you. Our records show this is not the first time a single human soldier has produced numbers like this, she said. There was an engagement at a colony called Ashwell 4 months ago. 1 soldier, similar circumstances, similar result, and another at a supply depot near the Trellin border. We assumed these were exaggerations, propaganda designed to demoralize our forces. They are not exaggerations, I said. Then explain it to me, she said. And for the first time, her voice lost some of its rehearsed quality, and underneath it, I heard something closer to genuine confusion, maybe even fear. Explain how one of you does what an entire squad of ours cannot. I thought about Meridian. I thought about the goldfields burning under 2 suns, and 11 Marines who did not walk out of a station they had every right to walk out of, and I thought about the counselors back home, who wanted me to talk about my feelings, and how none of them would ever understand what I was about to say, because none of them had ever needed to. We are not stronger than you, I said. We are not faster. Our weapons are not so different from yours that the difference explains what happened in that relay room. Then what does? She asked. I looked at her, and for a moment I let her see exactly how tired I was. Not the physical tiredness of 2 days in a cell, but something older and heavier than that. You gave us a reason to stop being afraid of dying, I said. That is the whole answer. That is the entire equation. You took something from us that we are never getting back, and once that happens, once a person truly understands they have already lost the thing they were most afraid to lose, there is nothing left to threaten them with. Verith Nolis did not respond right away. She sat very still, and I watched her turn my words over in her mind, the way you turn over a stone looking for what is underneath it. The War Council convenes in 6 hours, she said eventually. They have requested your presence, remotely, through a translated feed. They want to hear this answer from you directly. I laughed, and it surprised both of us. You want me to explain myself to the people who ordered my planet burned, I said. They want to understand you, she said. Understanding is not the same as forgiveness. I am not asking you to forgive anything. I am telling you that 12 beings who have never lost a war in recorded memory are afraid of what you represent, and fear, in my experience, makes for very bad decisions unless it is properly informed. I thought about refusing. I thought about it seriously. Sitting in that cell with my wound still healing, and my squad still dead, and my planet still ash under 2 suns that did not care what happened beneath them. Then I thought about the Marines coming after me, thousands of them, farmers and teachers and shop clerks, all carrying their own silence into this war, and I thought about what it might mean if 12 beings with the power to end this conflict actually understood, even a little, what they were facing. Fine, I said. I will talk to your council. 6 hours later, I stood in a small chamber aboard the Kothvel flagship, facing a screen that showed 12 figures arranged in a ring, their faces a mixture of species I did not recognize, their expressions ranging from curiosity to something close to hostility. A being at the center of the ring, older than the others, with markings along its face that suggested rank or seniority, addressed me first. Human, it said, through a translator that rendered its voice flat and mechanical. You are aware that our forces recorded 41 kills attributed to you in a single engagement. You are aware this number exceeds the combined output of entire squads in similar engagements across multiple campaigns. We wish to understand this discrepancy. I stood a little straighter, because whatever else was true, I was not going to stand in front of these people looking smaller than I felt. It is not a discrepancy, I said. It is a pattern. You have seen it before. Ashwell, the Trellin border. You called them exaggerations because the alternative was harder to accept. A second council member, younger, sharper in tone, cut in. And what is the alternative? Human. It removed the only leash that was ever holding us back. Silence moved through that chamber like something physical, and I let it sit there, because I remembered a rule from long before this war, a rule my father taught me on the farm back home, that silence after a hard truth does more work than any argument that follows it. The elder council member spoke again, quieter this time. You are one soldier, it said. One. And you speak as though you represent something larger. I do, I said. I represent every single human who signed up in the 8 days after Meridian burned. Thousands of us, in recruitment lines that stretched for city blocks. You are not facing one Marine with an unusual kill count. You are facing the first data point in a pattern you have not yet finished measuring, and every day this war continues, that pattern grows. A third voice, one that had not spoken yet, asked the question that I would later learn shook that chamber more than anything I had said so far. If we ended this war today, it asked, would that pattern stop? I thought about my answer for a long time before I gave it, because I understood, even then, that whatever I said next would travel further than any report, further than any kill count, further than the 41 bodies I had left behind in that relay room. I do not know, I said honestly. That is not my decision to make. But I know this. Every world you burn adds another Marine to a line that does not end. Every relay you defend adds another number to a count you are clearly afraid to keep counting. You asked me what the kill count is for one Earth Marine. I am telling you the honest answer. It depends entirely on how long you keep giving us reasons to add to it. The council chamber went silent again, and this time the silence lasted long enough that the translator device beside me actually flickered, as though uncertain whether there was anything left worth translating. Vareth Nolis, standing beside me throughout the exchange, finally spoke into the silence, addressing the council directly in their own language. And though I could not understand the words, I understood the tone, because tone translates across any species when it carries enough weight. She was not asking them to be merciful. She was asking them to be smart. The council did not respond to me directly after that. The feed cut, and I was returned to my cell, and for 3 days, nothing happened at all, which was somehow worse than the fighting had been. On the 4th day, the station shook. Not an explosion. Something else. A deep shudder that traveled through the walls, like the whole structure was reconsidering its own existence. And I was on my feet before I understood why. Old instincts pulling me upright before conscious thought had caught up. The door to my cell did not open the way it had before. Slow and deliberate under guard escort. It opened fast, and Vareth Nolis stood there alone. No soldiers behind her. Her uniform slightly disheveled in a way that told me something had gone very wrong very quickly. "We are under attack," she said. "A relief fleet, human designation, moving faster than our sensors projected possible. They believe you are still alive on this station, and they are not slowing down to confirm it." I felt something in my chest that I had not expected to feel in that moment. Something close to relief, and close to pride, and close to grief, all tangled together in a knot I did not have time to untangle. "They came for me," I said. "They came for the pattern," she said, and there was no accusation in her voice, only exhaustion. 1 Marine, 41 kills. A council that spent 3 days arguing about what you represent, instead of deciding how to respond to it. Do you understand what you have done, Daniel Cross? I did not. Not fully. Not in that moment. I only understood that a fleet was coming, and that I was still locked in a cell aboard a ship that fleet intended to reduce to debris, and that Vareth Nolis, for reasons I did not yet understand, seemed to be on my side. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. "Because the council could not agree on what to do with you," she said. "Half believe you should be executed as a warning. Half believe you should be studied, kept alive, understood. I believe both positions miss the actual lesson, which is that keeping you here at all was always going to end badly for us. Now come, if you die on this ship, the lesson your people take from it will be far worse than anything a live Marine could have taught them." We moved through corridors that had been full of soldiers 3 days ago, and were now full of crew scrambling toward escape pods and defense stations, the entire ship rearranging itself around the sudden, brutal fact of a human fleet closing in faster than anyone had planned for. I had no weapon. Vareth Nolis had a sidearm she did not offer me, and I understood why, because trust between us was not a finished thing, only a thing that had started, fragile as new ice. We reached a hangar bay just as another shudder rocked the ship. This one closer, this one loud enough that I felt it in my teeth. "That was a direct hit," she said. "Their weapons are stronger than our projections indicated. Everything about your fleet's arrival has exceeded our projections. Get used to that feeling," I told her. And I was not trying to be cruel, only honest, because it seemed like honesty was the only currency that had worked between us so far. A shuttle sat powered and waiting in the bay, smaller crew already aboard, and Vareth Nolis pushed me toward it with more force than I expected from someone who had spent the last 3 days treating me like a specimen worth preserving, rather than a threat worth containing. "You are not coming with us to be executed," she said. "You are coming with us because the Council needs to hear directly from your fleet commanders, and because I believe, against every instinct my training has given me, that ending this the hard way benefits nobody left standing at the end of it." I climbed aboard the shuttle, and through the viewport I watched the Cathvel flagship take another hit, this one tearing through an outer hull section, in a silent flash of light that the vacuum swallowed before any sound could reach us. Somewhere out there, human ships were doing to that fleet exactly what I had done to that relay room, and I felt the same tangled knot of feelings return, because winning did not feel the way I had expected it to feel. Not anymore. Not after everything that had happened on Meridian and Threshold Station, and every place in between. The shuttle broke away from the flagship and burned hard toward a rendezvous point Vareth Nolis had negotiated through a channel I did not fully understand. Some kind of temporary truce frequency both sides apparently kept open for exactly this kind of desperate moment. As we cleared the debris field, my own fleet's flagship came into view, a shape I recognized instantly despite months away from anything resembling home, and the sight of it hit me harder than I expected. A wave of something that was not quite relief, and not quite grief, but lived somewhere in the space between them. "We are not attacking your shuttle," came a voice over the comm. Human, clipped, professional. "Confirm passenger identity." "Corporal Daniel Cross," I said, my voice rougher than I expected. "3rd Colonial Marine Division, requesting immediate extraction and a channel to command. I have information the War Council wants delivered directly." There was a pause, the kind of pause that told me someone on the other end of that comm had just realized who they were talking to. And then the voice came back, quieter, almost disbelieving. "Corporal Cross was listed as killed in action on Threshold Station," it said. "Confirm your identity again." "I am not dead," I said. "I would like that corrected in the official record, if it is not too much trouble." Another pause, and then something I had not heard in a very long time, something that made my throat tighten in a way I was not prepared for. Laughter, relief, a voice that had clearly been holding its breath for longer than protocol allowed, finally letting it go. "Copy that, Corporal," it said. "Extraction inbound. Welcome home." Vareth Nolis watched the exchange in silence, and when it ended, she turned to me with an expression I had not seen on her before, something that looked almost like curiosity, mixed with the beginning of respect. "They sounded surprised you were alive," she said. "Everybody keeps being surprised about that," I told her. "Might want to start adjusting your projections." She almost smiled. It was a small thing, barely a shift in the muscles of her face, but I noticed it, and I filed it away the same way I had filed away my own steady hands after 11 deaths, because it told me something about how this war might actually end, if enough people on both sides were willing to keep adjusting their projections, instead of repeating the same mistakes. The shuttle docked. I stepped onto human decking for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, and somewhere behind me, aboard a fleet that had just watched its projections shatter for the second time in 1 week, 12 beings on a council ring were about to receive a report that would change everything about how this war was fought from that point forward. I did not know yet what that report would say. I was about to find out, along with everyone else. 3 weeks passed before I learned what happened inside that council chamber after Vareth Nolis delivered her report, and I only learned it because she came to find me, aboard a neutral station sitting in the gap between our two fleets, a place both sides had agreed, for the first time in this war, to treat as something other than a target. I did not expect to see her again. I told her that, standing in a docking corridor that smelled like recycled air and fresh paint, and she looked at me with an expression I still had not learned to fully read. "I did not expect to come back either," she said, "but the council required someone who had spoken with you directly, and I was the only one who fit that description who was still willing to walk back into a room full of people who wanted very badly to disagree with everything I was about to tell them." We found a quiet corner of the station, a viewing deck that looked out over open space, no ships visible in either direction, just stars and silence, and she told me what had happened. "The report on Threshold Station reached the council within hours of your extraction," she said. 41 confirmed kills. A relay disabled by 1 soldier who should have died 8 times over according to every model our tacticians had built. And then, 3 days later, a rescue fleet that arrived faster and hit harder than any of our projections believed possible, launched entirely because your people believed 1 Marine was still worth that kind of risk. "That is not a small thing," I said. "Believing someone is worth the risk." "No," she agreed. "It is not. And it is the piece of this the council understood least of all, because in our own command structure, a single soldier is never worth diverting a fleet. Numbers matter more than names. Your people apparently do not share that arithmetic, and that difference frightened the council far more than your kill count did." I thought about that for a long moment, looking out at stars that did not care about any of this, that had been burning long before the Cathvel arrived at Meridian, and would keep burning long after this war ended, one way or another. "What did the council decide?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment, before answering, and I understood, even before she spoke, that whatever came next was not going to be simple. "They did not vote for full escalation," she said. "That surprised many of us. There was significant pressure toward it. Arguments that your fleet's response proved you were building towards something larger, something that needed to be crushed before it grew. But the elder members, the ones who have sat on that council long enough to remember wars fought before recorded memory, argued something different. What did they argue? I asked. That a species willing to send an entire fleet for one soldier is not a species that can be worn down through attrition, she said. That every world we burn does not weaken your resolve. It multiplies it, exactly as you told them yourself. They understood, finally, that the arithmetic they had built this entire war around was the wrong arithmetic from the very beginning. So what happens now? I asked, and I realized my voice had gone quieter than I intended, because the answer to that question mattered more to me than almost anything else in my life at that moment. Terms, she said. Not surrender, not victory. Terms. A negotiated cessation, beginning with a full withdrawal from 3 colony systems, including the space Meridian sits within, and an agreement to establish a demilitarized boundary while formal talks continue. It is not peace, Daniel Cross. I want to be honest with you about that. But it is the first time in this council's history that they have chosen terms over conquest, and that did not happen because of strategy or superior weapons. It happened because of one number, I said. It happened because of one Marine, she corrected, and this time she did smile, small and brief but unmistakably real. 41 confirmed kills was the number that started the conversation, but the number that ended it was different. It was the number of ships your fleet was willing to send for a single soldier they believed might still be breathing. I stood there for a long time after she said that, looking out at the stars, thinking about 11 Marines who did not walk out of Threshold Station, thinking about a farm world with 2 suns and gold autumn soil, thinking about thousands of people who stood in recruitment lines 8 days after everything they loved turned to ash. None of them got to see this moment. That was the part that sat heaviest in my chest, heavier than the wound in my side that had long since healed into a scar I would carry for the rest of my life. You asked me something once, I said. In that council chamber, you asked what the kill count is for one Earth Marine. I remember, she said. I do not think that was ever the right question, I said. The real question was never how many we could kill. It was how much you were willing to lose before you understood that killing us was never going to be the thing that ended this. Understanding was always going to be the thing that ended this. Vareth Nolis nodded slowly, and for a moment neither of us said anything else, because some silences do not need filling, they only need to be allowed to exist. I do not know if the terms would have held, if this had been the end of the story I am telling you. Wars rarely end as cleanly as anyone hopes, and the road from a negotiated cessation to something resembling real peace is long and uncertain, and full of people on both sides who still believe the fighting should continue. But I know this. Somewhere in a council chamber that had never once, in recorded memory, chosen restraint over conquest, 12 beings looked at a report about one human Marine and made a different choice than the one their entire history had prepared them to make. They asked what the kill count was for one Earth Marine, expecting a number that would confirm everything they already believed about strength and weakness and the arithmetic of war. Instead, they got an answer that shook the foundation of everything they thought they understood about what it means to fight a species that has already survived losing everything it was ever afraid to lose. The answer was never really a number at all. It was a question they had never thought to ask themselves before, and once asked, it could never again be unasked. How much are you willing to lose before you finally understand that some things cannot be won the way you have always assumed wars are won? I do not know how the rest of this war ends. Nobody does yet. Not fully. Not with any certainty that matters. But I know that 11 Marines died on a station most of the galaxy will never remember the name of, and their deaths were not the end of anything. They were the beginning of a question that a war council will spend the rest of its existence trying to answer. And I know that somewhere out among those stars, more Marines are standing in lines right now, farmers and teachers and shop clerks, carrying their own silence into a war they did not choose, ready to make sure that question never stops being asked until it finally gets the answer it deserves.